Today, communists around the world celebrate Vladimir Lenin's birthday. They also celebrate Earth Day, April 22nd. No coincidence, and in a minute, I'll tell you why it's no coincidence. But it's also a very special day for me, where probably one of the best things in my life happened, and maybe perhaps one of the worst things in my life. But first, let's talk about Earth Day. So in 1970, one of the co-founders of Earth Day, a guy by the name of Ira Einhorn, was a radical communist, and he said, if we don't get radical about taking care of the earth, the earth ain't gonna survive another 10 years. Interesting note about Ira Einhorn. Very violent man, like most of these environmentalists are. Very violent man, and his girlfriend broke up with him because he was violent and crazy. And he told her if she didn't come and get her clothes today, he was throwing them all out on the street. So she went back to get her clothes, and she disappeared. He said she went out to the grocery store and never came back when the cops questioned him about her disappearance. But I think it was like a year and a half later, his neighbor, who lived in an apartment downstairs from him, called the police and said, there's this strange, foul-smelling liquid, brownish, reddish liquid, coming from the ceiling from Ira Einhorn's apartment. When the cops went in there, they found her body. He'd killed her and stashed her body in the apartment. So that's one of the co-founders of Earth Day that you probably won't hear about today because this is a socialist issue, the Democrat Party's biggest issue. And from the latest Pew Research poll, 94% of mainstream media reporters are staunch Democrats that have never in their life voted for a Republican. So you're not going to hear about the violent past and current history of the Earth Day birthday movement. But Saul Alinsky, one of the early leaders of the communists in America, used to say the issue is never the issue. So just like Lenin said he had useful idiots, there was these young people that he would convince them communism was good. There's a lot of environmentalists that I would consider useful idiots. They really believe what they're saying. Like AOC literally said, and this is the fun part of Earth Day, you get to hear all these stupid comments from politicians and Hollywood celebrities. I think she called this Hypocrite Day, the most hypocritical quotes. So AOC 9 years ago famously said that the earth is going to end in 12 years. So she believes it. She probably believed it. She probably, she said that's why she's not going to have kids. Good. I'm glad they believe that. We don't need these people reproducing. But the issue is never the issue. So the issue has never been the environment. The issue has been socialism, communism. It's just, the same thing under different names, where basically it's statism, where they want the government to control people. And in order for the government to control people, a famous Democrat quote, Rahm Emanuel said it during Obama's presidency, Nancy Pelosi said it during COVID, is never let a crisis go to waste. So either they'll take a crisis and use it for their benefit, or they create a crisis and use it for their benefit. And in the 70s, Time magazine said, if we don't stop using fossil fuels, we're going to have an ice age. We're going to freeze. The whole world's going to be like the Antarctic. What's the answer? More government control. Communism, socialism. That's the answer from the left. That's the answer from the Democrat Party. We need more regulation. We need more government control. Then they're like, oh, no, 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 the science changed. The science changed. We're going to be overheated. We're going to burn to death. What's the answer? More government control. See, the issue is never the issue. Now, if the issue was really the issue, everybody would be celebrating, because according to the EPA, the last year of Donald Trump's presidency, America had the cleanest air and the cleanest water in the history of America. And we were also energy independent. We didn't have to go to war in the Middle East anymore to fight over oil. We didn't have to depend on Russia for oil. We were net exporters of oil. We drilled more than anybody. And if you remember, gas was more than half, less than half of what it is now. But of course, they're not going to talk about that today. You're going to hear ridiculous things like Sheryl Crow said a couple Earth days ago, that everybody, when they go to the bathroom, they should just use one little square of toilet paper. You're going to hear people say we got to ride bicycles. You hear this from guys like John Kerry, who flies a private jet everywhere he goes. Leonardo DiCaprio, who flies a jet everywhere they go. You're going to hear stupid things like Al Gore said, 20 years ago, that in 10 years, Florida would be underwater. Well, I'm in Florida, we're not underwater. Or in 10 years, polar bears will be extinct. Well, I just checked. The polar bear population has grown every year since Al Gore made that dumb prediction. These people are alarmists. They use fear to get their useful idiots to do what they want. And what do? They do violent things. I remember years ago when I was on Facebook, this is going back maybe 10 years ago, at least, when I was on it. And I was going to an MMA school at the time, and I became friends with everybody there. And the instructor was a super lib. I didn't realize that until I seen his Facebook, and I was like, oh, okay. And he would put up these questions. Oh, what political party do you think a terrorist would be more likely to join? And all his liberal friends were saying Republican. And so I wrote, obviously the Democrat Party. And I listed all the environmental terrorist groups, the environmentalists, what were they? The ELF, Environmentalist Liberation Front, the Environmentalist Army, Animal Front. I mean, these were literal, like the Environmentalist Liberation Front at that time was the number one terrorist on the FBI domestic terrorism list. So I just hit them with facts. I mean, liberals hate facts. Facts are inconvenient to liberals. Liberals make their decision based on feelings, not on facts. So he said, well, what about the KKK? And I'm like, okay, well, the KKK was founded by the Democrat Party. They were, and I said, in fact, at this time, it must have been like 2010, because I kind of remember either Robert Byrd was still alive in the Senate, or he had just passed away a few years earlier. He might have just passed away. But I said the last living member of the KKK in the United States Senate is a Democrat Robert KKK Byrd. Not only was he a member, he was a Grand Kleagle. He was a leader. Grand Kleagles used to recruit. And Robert Byrd, Democrat majority leader in the 90s, what Chuck Schumer is today, he get voted on by other Democrats. So the Democrats voted for a former Grand Kleagle of the KKK to run the Senate in the 90s, Robert Byrd. And he bragged that he recruited 350 of his racist friends. He was a very successful Grand Kleagle when he was a Grand Kleagle of the KKK. And just recently I read a pretty good article by a Harvard professor, and I think he's a liberal, but he's just giving data about the KKK and how these Grand Kleagles made a lot of money. It would cost someone like $300 to join the KKK. So these Grand Kleagles were racking it up back then. He was a leader back in the 50s and 60s. So I knocked that argument down, and every argument he had, I had an answer, because the violence is always on the left in this country. It always has been. And you've seen even during the Trump administration, Antifa and professors were on Antifa saying violence is justified against people that are given hate speech, because hate speech is violent. So they would literally come on TV and say it's okay to hit someone with a baseball bat if they're talking about something you deem is violent, that's going to cause harm to America. So these people are very violent. You've seen Antifa riot every day in the streets. You've seen Black Lives Marxists. And again, the issue wasn't the issue. They said it was Black Lives Matter. But even like the black liberal Democrat mayor, Eric Adams in New York City recently said, where's Black Lives Matter in New York when black kids are getting killed? Just because it's other black people killing them, there's still Black lives still matter. But Eric Adams, either he knows and he was using sarcasm, or he doesn't know that Black Lives Matter don't care about black lives. In their website, they say they are Marxists. That is their goal, is to bring Marxism, communism to America. That's their goal. The issue is never the issue on the left. And you've seen the exact opposite during Obama's. We hated Obama's policy. We didn't hate him as a person. We hated his policies were horrible. They were very socialist. And his spending was out of control. So we formed the Tea Party. And you've seen every Tea Party event, it was peaceful. Every Tea Party event, they cleaned up after themselves and ended in prayer and started in prayer. And I remember a CNN analyst on the radio, she couldn't see one of the Tea Party leaders, I think his name was Dave Webb, and she said, well, he was just talking about how we need to teach kids hard work and, how to persevere and not tell, kids, black kids are victims. And she said, well, that's easy for you to say because you have white privilege. And he said, excuse me, how do I have white privilege? She said, because you're white. He goes, well, I was watching it on a podcast so you could see the two, but she was on the radio, so she couldn't see him. And he said, well, you need to have better research done before you go on a show because I'm black and I've always been black. And he's not even a light-skinned black guy. He's black. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. She apologized. She was so embarrassed. But she's one of the useful idiots. Even though she was a lawyer, she was a useful idiot of the Democrat Party. Even though she was supposed to be an objective reporter analyst from CNN, she was a useful idiot of the Democrat Party, and she believed the lies that if you care about fiscal sanity in America, if you don't want us to have hyperinflation from overspending, you're a racist. Basically, if you're not a Democrat, you're a racist because the left cannot win on arguments. All they can win is name calling. So if you disagree with them, you're a racist, a homophobe, misogynist, Islamophobe, whatever. They just name call like little kids on the left. But the good news is people are seeing it. So people are seeing it and people are rejecting the socialist policies of this government. Now, Joe Biden, I've watched Joe Biden for over 40 years, and I know a lot about Joe Biden. And the one thing that I do agree with President Obama is he's right when President Obama said, never underestimate Joe effing things up. He's effed things up pretty bad since he's been president. And speaking of President Obama, his defense secretary, Bob Gates, also said a true statement. He said, in 40 years of public life, Joe Biden has been wrong on every foreign policy issue and every national security issue. And I agree with that as well. About the only things I agreed with the Obama administration on. But Joe Biden was just a grifter. I mean, it's obvious, like, his brother, who has no construction experience, made millions with a construction business that rebuilt Iraq while Joe Biden was vice president. His son, 2 weeks after coming out of rehab for crack addiction, got on a Ukrainian board for gas when he had no experience with gas and got a check for $83,000 a month. And then in his emails that the media tried to deny were real and now they're admitting are real, says that he had to give 50% of it to his dad, Joe Biden. And the list goes on and on. Bottom line is, most of us on our side know he's a grifter, but I have to say this because sometimes I get liberals watching this and they're surprised. And they'll get mad at me until they look it up and they're like, wow, Blue Collar Catholic was right. Joe Biden's been a grifter for 50 years. How did he become president? And but another thing that I know about Joe Biden, he never has an original thought. When he does, they're pretty dumb, like partitioning Iraq, and he's had some really dumb thoughts. But usually he just goes along wherever the party was. So in the 70s, when the Democrats were racist, He said this, and you can Google it. He voted against desegregating the schools, and Kamala Harris called him out on it in the first debate. That's why he owed her the vice presidency. He said this. He said, he goes, I'm voting against desegregating the schools because I don't want my children to grow up in a racial jungle. He's said the N-word several times in a Senate discussion, like clear as day, at least a dozen times. You can look that up. According to Van Jones, Democrat strategist, Joe Biden's crime bill did more to harm Black Americans than any other law in America. It was really a Jim Crow law. And according to Van Jones, African-American Democrat strategist who hated Donald Trump, who cried when Donald Trump got elected, literally had tears in his eyes. You could go see CNN, look it up. When Donald Trump signed the Justice Reform Bill, Van Jones said that Donald Trump did more for Black American men than any president in the last 50 years. Think about all the presidents in the last 50 years. This Democrat spoke the truth momentarily until the left came on him, and then he stopped talking about it. He never denied that statement, but he stopped talking about it. So the left will lie and, just call us racist, say we don't care about the environment. We all want clean water. We all want clean air, but we follow the real science. Science, have you seen, especially the past 2 years, when they use this crisis, when the leading vaccine expert from Germany, Dr. Geert Vanden Bossche, talked about this recent injection. It's very interesting what he said, but he's been banned. Dr. Malone, who has like 10 patents on the mRNA technology that created this vaccine, they did not want to hear what he had to say. The only people they let speak on social media and in the mainstream media on TV are bureaucrats like Fauci, who's the highest paid government employee. He gets paid more than the president of the United States. He's been a government bureaucrat for 50 years. Just because he wears a lab coat does not make him a doctor or a scientist. Trust me. So they will silence any opposition. And today, on Earth Day, they're not going to tell you about, the eco-terrorism, but I would look up eco-terrorism. You'd be surprised what these people do. Not only do they burn down companies, they go to people's personal homes and burn their homes down. They're very violent. They're very, very violent, these eco-terrorism terrorists. And what do they want? They want like Norway. Everyone says, oh, Norway, look at Norway socialism. Bernie Sanders, oh, we should be like Norway. Norway, blue-collar guys like me can't even afford a car. They drive bicycles because there's 100% tax on cars. Yet Norway's number one revenue comes from selling oil. These people are hypocrites. These people are all hypocrites. Trust me. So this is what they want. They, again, another rule of Saul Alinsky is to call your opposition what you are. These people are science deniers, and they try and say we deny the science. Okay? Trump's last year in office, we had the cleanest water and the cleanest air. We repaired the ozone. Remember years ago there were holes in the ozone? The holes are gone. We repaired the ozone. So we're not going to end in 3 years like AOC predicted. And Florida's not underwater like Al Gore predicted. These people are all alarmists. They're all socialists. And they're going to lose in November because people are seeing it. When Obama became president and started implementing these left-wing agendas, I heard a lot of moderate Democrats saying, I didn't leave. They left being Democrats. They said, I didn't leave the party left me. These were moderates. They said the party's becoming too liberal. Today I'm hearing liberals, liberal Democrat Bill Maher said, I didn't leave the party left me. So they're becoming too left-wing for Bill Maher. The Democrats used to, they claim they're for the minorities. Well, 80% of Hispanics do not support Joe Biden. That's huge. That is cataclysmic for the Democrats. But that's reality. And one of the things my Hispanic friend said really offended most Hispanics is them, they're trying to change American culture, but they're trying to change Hispanic culture by referring to it as Latinx, or Latinx is how it's spelled. Because you can't even say that word in Spanish, you know. So in Spanish, everything has a male and female pronoun, I guess. So either you're a Latina, a woman, or a Latino, a man. And they want to get rid of that because these people are anti-science. They're saying 80% of Democrats say when a baby is born, the doctor can't look at it and say if it's a male or a female. Like, they're just denying basic science. And that was one thing Bill Maher said. My party's become goofy, you know. 5 years ago, Democrats weren't saying men could be pregnant. They're just going against basic science. These are the science deniers. And just like they won't let the scientists speak on COVID that disagree with them, they don't let the scientists speak on the environment that disagree with them. And I'm talking like PhDs from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, talking about very intelligent, educated guys, because they can't win on ideas. They can't win arguments. All they can win is the propaganda war, because they control the media and they control social media until Elon Musk takes over Twitter and Trump gets Truth Media going. And then we will even the playing field. That's why they're so afraid. They are so afraid of free speech. They hate free speech. If you look in these communist countries, the first thing they do is get rid of what we call the First Amendment. Freedom of religion and freedom of speech. Then the next thing they go after is our Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And everybody on the left hate those three things about America. So now getting back to me, April 22nd, 1985, I joined the Navy, and this juvenile delinquent from Irvington, New Jersey became a man, thanks to the United States military. But it was Jesus Christ who transformed my life in boot camp, but he used boot camp. And I want to encourage you guys today, if you're going through a hard time, it's a blessing from God, because God uses these hard times to lead us to him. And there was no way I was going to make it through boot camp. I was an undisciplined, drunk, drug user since I was 12 years old. And it was by the power of God that I got through boot camp and did very well. So no matter where you're at, even if the devil is harassing you today, if you didn't watch this video, you need to watch it. Vincent Lampart, the interview with The Exorcist. I did it like a year ago, but I didn't want to post it because it was just so poor quality, and I felt it was like disrespectful to him because he was a pretty famous guy. But I should have posted. I wish I would have posted it then, but I didn't. But I posted it the other day, and he just has so much wisdom. And one thing he said was, it's a gift. St. Paul said it was a gift that, the devil buffeted him, Satan buffeted him. And it's a gift God allows sometimes for us to let demons harass us, because it keeps us humble and it keeps us trusting on God. And he who is in us, the Holy Spirit, is greater than he who is in the world, the devil. But if things are always going right and everything is perfect, with your health, with your finances, with your relationships, you tend to forget about God, and it's just your human nature. So God led me to the military, got me through, and it was for the best years of my life. I married my high school sweetheart. Well, neither one of us went to high school. We were juvenile delinquent, but my girlfriend since I was like 13, and we had 5 children together, and that was like, I'm glad I joined the military. April 22nd, 1989, I got out, and sometimes I think it was a mistake, and I just got to trust that God allowed it. For some reason, I was like good friends with high-ranking officers, and they would give me like really good offers in the military and outside the military, like where I would be so much better off financially. I would be probably a very wealthy man by now, not having to work 2 jobs. But every time I turned those offers down, it was because it would have taken me away from my family. It maybe would have taken me away from God. So I'm trusting that, I made the right choices, because what good is it if you gain the whole world, but you lose your own soul? So I always, whenever I make a decision, the bottom line is this going to bring me closer to my wife and children, or take me further away from my wife and children? Is this going to bring me closer to God, or take me further away from God? So although my human nature, I think April 22nd, man, why did I get out? I could have been retired 10 years ago. I would have retired in 2005, April 22nd, with a pension. And if I would have taken some of these offers for jobs overseas, where I couldn't bring my wife, I'd be freaking very well off financially. And some other jobs where I would have been traveling a lot, leaving my wife all the time, I would have been very well off financially. But, at the end of the day, I look at my wife, who I love dearly, my children, my grandchildren, and there's no other place I'd rather be. So God bless, stay Catholic, and enjoy the day.